Hi everyone, Matt here, and today I want to give you all a little behind the scenes look at my world of planning as a teacher. So, what we're looking at right here is an app that I found a few years ago that I have loved. It's an app called Agenda. It's completely free. Unfortunately, it's only available on Apple devices. So, if you're out there in the Android or Chrome world, find the Agenda app and send an email to them and be like, hey, please make an Android app. But regardless, however and whatever you use for your planning, I thought it might be nice to give you all a view into my world of where I'm at when I'm in that individual stage of planning. So one thing I really like about this is, one, I can see all my different classes sorted by grade level, and I can scroll back through and see what I taught on different days. And so this really helps me. I teach anywhere from a minimum of around 10 different classes a week and up from there. So it helps really keep me organized. And I think that's really helpful in planning. And it gives me access to old plans. So I can say, oh yeah, I remember like a couple months ago, I did a really cool activity about the weather. Maybe we could do something to review this today. So that's one thing I really like about it. And another thing I want to talk about as I'm letting you look into my private notebook where, rarely people come to hang out and peep around is about the act of writing a plan. And one thing I want to call back to from the writing process that we were just talking about is how when we're writing and when people go through the process of writing, one of the biggest influences on how we write is our audience. And so these plans you're looking at right now, this is Matt writing to future Matt, right? This is like me saying, hey, Matt, on March 10th at 6:15, here's my idea, right? I'm writing a letter to myself in the future. So the audience really for this writing assignment is just myself. And that's why you can see here, these are short, tiny phrases, right? And if we can look and see this right here, Matt says, touch, students say, touch. This is a 10-minute routine that I go through that is one of my core routines for clarifying and remembering vocabulary words, teaching with the ECRIF framework. And because I've been teaching with that ECRIF framework for the past 6 years, I've gotten to a point where all I need to write down in my notebook to write a note to future Matt is these 6 words, and I go, oh, I know exactly what to do when it comes time for the class. So if I was going to ask one of you to be the substitute teacher for my class, and then I gave you this, well, this might be pretty worthless. You think, well, what am I supposed to do for 5 minutes with 10 through 6-9? Like, what am I supposed to? And you wouldn't know that in the daytime, I got out a bag full of dice, and I put a bunch of dice on all the tables. And so I knew that this was a series of dice games. And by giving students different die that we had that added up to different numbers, we were going to practice different numbers there, right? But I didn't need to write down those words because I'd already had those thoughts and put the dice in the classroom. So that's one thing I want to just say, because one thing that we're going to be working with across this third module that's about planning is we'd love for you all to be bringing some past plans that you've used in classes into class with us. And so we wanted to show, at least for us, and I'm sure your other teachers and trainers will give you views into their notebooks as well, but what that might look like. Because I know there's also this idea of, on a certificate course, what a lesson plan looks like and the amount of writing that goes into it. And to me, that makes sense because, again, I think about audience. And if I'm writing a plan knowing that people are going to look at it later, then I'm going to write way more words than this, right? But I want to show you this is how I plan, so that if your planning looks something like this or different, but your planning looks how your planning looks, when we're asking you and inviting you to bring a plan in, however you do it, whatever process you go through in planning, that's what we want to explore. And so when we're going through activities over the rest of this module, and I'm going to be bringing samples in, I'm going to be bringing in screenshots from this app, right? And as we reflect on past plans and think about planning in the future, this is exactly the text that I'll be bringing into class, at least with my group, to work with. So that's one thing we wanted to share, is just to give you a window of how that looks. And if you have plans that are written in a way that only you understand, it's okay to work with those right now because of the way that we're working with them. Because in the past, when you made those plans, you weren't writing them thinking about me. You didn't know me yet. The other thing I want to talk about really quickly is about how to choose a lesson to reflect upon. And one thing I think about a lot when I'm specifically sitting down and saying, okay, I want to review on some of my lessons this week, do some improvements, and think about what I might do differently next time. One of the biggest things I consider is my own emotions. I've found through the past several years of really pushing myself to kind of reflect and constantly revise plans and try them again and again, if I teach a class and have a really strong emotional experience, it makes it a lot harder for me to come back and think about that class logically and objectively in the way that I need to do really deep reflection. And that strong emotional experience can be in different ways. I could have an amazing class, like this right here that we're seeing from slideshow down through shopping at Goyo. This is a complete start to finish eCRIF lesson where the objective is students will be able to use 5 to 8 cell phone vocabulary words in a role play scenario to buy and sell goods at a Goyo, which is a local sells everything kind of store. I don't know if y'all have Goyo in the parts of Nicaragua where y'all are calling in from, but down in Costa Rica, Goyo's the spot. You need a new phone, you're going to Goyo. So this is my eCRIF lesson, and I remember teaching this lesson, and it was just electric. Everything clicked. My students ate a healthy breakfast and came to class with tons of energy. The weather was just right. None of the neighbor dogs were barking. It was just that perfect storm where everything clicked and went beautifully, right? And when I look back and think about this class, all I can really remember is that really strong positive emotion of how much everyone was laughing and smiling and speaking in this fluency activity, right? How much they achieved that objective. And so it's going to be really hard for me to reflect on this lesson. Because as a teacher, I look at this, and to me, this is a piece of art, right? This is more or less a 60-minute experience that I shared with a class of 20 adults, and we had an amazing time, and I really view it as that piece of art. And so it's hard for me to now look at it critically and say, well, what if we change this color just a little bit? And what if we added a little bit more here? Because I had such a strong emotional experience, even if it was positive. And I think the same is true if we have a class that goes really, really south, not in the direction we were planning. Maybe you show up to class and you're feeling super tired, and by the end of class, you just have that feeling of, wow, I survived that one. I know sometimes I would go into a preschool class with 22 and 3-year-olds and finish a 4-hour day there and just think, man, we didn't do a lot of English, but I survived. And that was as much success as I could feel from that day. And it's also hard for me to go back to those really negative emotional experiences that are a part of teaching sometimes and think logically and clearly about those. So if I was thinking about doing what we're going to be asking you all to do over the next few weeks and bringing a plan from my past teaching in, I'm not going to bring this lesson about Goyo because I can't think objectively about it. It's a piece of art to me. It's a beautiful thing. I don't want to change it. And so a really, really positive emotional experience, our thinking and advice would be maybe that's not the class to dig into right now. And same as a really challenging experience. I want to show you a lesson now and talk a little bit about the plan that I do plan on bringing in tomorrow for a speaking lesson that I want to explore more and think about slowly and methodically with other people so that I can come up with new ideas. This is a class that I did with our advanced English groups, and it was back on February 25th of this year. And we did this really cool activity where we were using the sound words of sounds, looks, tastes, smells, feels, and then thinking about how those words can be used to make descriptions, but also exaggerations and predictions. And so we had a lot of image cards out in the room, and we're just working through that. And my students talked a lot, and they asked a lot of great questions. And by the end of class, I don't feel like most of them met the objective. I felt them all very curious for learning, right? They were all taking furious notes and seemed super excited, and they were really positive. But I also, when I listened to them in this example down here, when I was hoping that they would start, freely using that language together, they didn't. And so I was like, wow, they had a really positive emotional experience, but in terms of language learning, they didn't get to my objective, which is students will be able to make 1 to 2 descriptions, exaggerations, and predictions using the sense action verbs. And most of them didn't meet that learning objective, but I know that they learned. And so this is a lesson I look back at and I'm super curious, right? It didn't go amazing. It didn't go poorly. It went, and I want to know more about how it went. It's kind of like in the middle of that line to me. And so this is the lesson I plan on bringing in. My initial guess about this is I think I didn't do enough e-criffing around. I think this was a really cool activity. And maybe what I did before and after didn't create that sequence of what I need. But I'm not quite sure. And so I want to show you and talk about why I'm choosing this lesson. I'm going to bring in this lesson tomorrow because it didn't go perfect. And I'm not really sure exactly what I could change. And so I'm hoping that tomorrow I can work in a small group and share my experiences around this lesson with some other people, think about it together, and maybe finish tomorrow with a few ideas of how I might do a lesson like this differently in the future. And so that's our invitation for you for this whole module as we invite you to bring in plans from the past is feel empowered to bring in lessons that you didn't think went perfect, right? Because we want this to be a workshop and laboratory space where we're exploring. And it's harder to really get in and get into the nitty-gritties of the science of teaching and explore through reflection when what we're dealing with feels like a whole complete piece of art from the artistic side of teaching. So that's our invitation to you. I hope it's been fun and useful to get a peer on into my lessons. And I'm excited to look at some of your plans and think together about planning with you all. So thanks so much, and I hope you're having a great evening.